My daughter Ella spent 3 days preparing a full-course dinner for my mother's birthday, 23 guests, a seasonal menu she built from scratch, a cake she practiced twice just to perfect the rosettes. That morning, she was up before dawn, curling her hair and triple-checking the vegan options. By late afternoon, the house smelled like thyme and roasted garlic, and the dining room looked like something out of a magazine. 10 minutes before guests were supposed to arrive, I got the text. Change of plans. We're doing dinner at the Laurel, adults only. No punctuation. No apology. Ella didn't scream. She didn't cry, not then. She just stood by her cake, hands still dusted with sugar, and blinked too many times. That's when I realized. They weren't going to break her the way they broke me. Not if I could help it. Not this time. I stood in the doorway of the dining room, staring at the 23 chairs Ella and I had spent hours arranging. The place cards were hand-lettered in gold ink, set beside cloth napkins she had ironed herself. There were fresh daffodils on the table, her choice, because they look like happy trumpets, she'd said. And now, there was silence. No clinking glasses. No footsteps on the porch. Just the faint hum of the oven and the hollow throb in my chest. Ella was in the kitchen, reheating the pear tarts for the third time, still hopeful. She didn't know yet. She was humming some jazz tune under her breath, the way she always did when she was in her zone. Her apron had a small smudge of chocolate ganache on the front, and her cheeks were pink with adrenaline and oven heat. I walked back into the kitchen, phone still in my hand. I didn't know how to tell her. I just knew I couldn't lie. "Mom, do you think Grandma will like the lemon glaze?" she asked, holding up a tray of candied citrus like it was gold leaf. "I tweaked it this morning, it's more floral." I nodded, trying to smile. "It's perfect, sweetheart." My thumb hovered over the group chat again. My father's message sat at the top, blunt and smug. "We're doing dinner at the Laurel, adults only." It wasn't even phrased like a cancellation, more like an announcement. Like we'd never planned to host the party here in the first place. I scrolled down and saw the timestamp, 5:42 p.m. The guests were due at 6. I stepped into the hallway, hit dial on my dad's number. It rang twice. "Hey," he said, chipper. "You get the message?" "You're not coming?" I asked, holding my breath. No, we changed plans. It was just easier this way. We're already at the restaurant." "You're there now?" "Yep, just sat down. Menu looks great." "Why?" "Because Ella's been cooking for 3 days, I said, my voice low but sharp. "You said we'd host it here. She made food for 23 people. He paused. "Well, tell her not to take it personally. She can freeze the leftovers, right? Got a gal waiters here." The line went dead. I stood there, stunned. When I turned around, Ella was standing in the doorway. She'd heard everything. Her face gave nothing away at first. No tears, no panic. Just a small crease between her eyebrows as she looked from my phone to my face. "Wait," she said slowly. "They're not coming?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. She stepped forward, took the phone from my hand like it was evidence in a courtroom, and opened the thread. There it was, the message, the photo. My sister's kids smiling over a long restaurant table, my mother raising a glass of wine, my father laughing mid-bite. Ella stared for a second too long. And then, without a word, she walked back into the kitchen, looked at the cake 3 layers, lavender frosting, piped white chocolate lacy, and said, barely above a whisper, "We should throw it all out." I shook my head. Not this time. She didn't cry. She just stood in front of the cake she'd poured her whole heart into, fingers twitching at her sides like she wasn't sure whether to throw it, hug it, or collapse next to it. I watched her breathe too shallow, too fast. Her shoulders moved, but her face stayed still. That kind of quiet? It breaks you more than sobbing ever could. I took a step forward. "Ella, I'm fine," she said too quickly. "It's just food, right?" No, it wasn't. It was 3 days of preparation. It was the hand-whipped ganache, the individual dietary adjustments she researched until midnight. It was the sugar-free pear tart she made just for Grandma's diabetic neighbor, even though that neighbor hadn't RSVP'd. It was all the, "Do you think they'll like it?" questions she asked me every night. I called my mother next. It rang once. "Hello," she answered, bright as ever. "Did you really just not come?" I asked. There was a sigh. "Claire, don't start. We planned this for weeks. Ella. We just thought it would be more convenient," she cut in. "And honestly, we didn't want to risk anyone getting sick. I mean, she's 17. She's not 5, I snapped. She's trained. She sanitized everything. She even wore gloves while plating." "Well, it's sweet," she replied. "But it's not real cooking. Not like at a restaurant." I hung up before I screamed. Then I called my sister. Not because I expected better, but because I hoped, maybe, just maybe, she'd been left out of the decision. She hadn't. "Claire," she said with a mock, gentle tone, "don't guilt everyone over this. Ella's being dramatic. She's 17. She needs to learn not everything's about her. She made food, sure. But we didn't want to be her test subjects." Test subjects. The words landed like glass in my mouth. I hung up on her too. In the kitchen, Ella was still trying to hold it together. She was adjusting the lighting on the dimmer switch like any of it still mattered. "Do you think it's too warm in here?" she asked, her voice too light. I didn't want it to feel like fake fancy, but also not like cafeteria. She turned to me. I guess my face gave me away. Her eyes followed my hand. She took my phone before I could stop her. She read the thread. Saw the picture. My sister's kids, both teenagers, not exactly toddlers, already halfway through their steaks. My mother's hair blown out for the occasion. My dad smiling with a full glass of Cabernet. Her expression didn't crack at first. Then her shoulders did. And finally her face. Not with a scream. Not with a breakdown. Her whole expression just folded in on itself, like someone had quietly deflated her from the inside. She set the phone down gently, like it might shatter if it hit too hard. Then she looked at the cake. The cake she made from scratch. The one with candied violets, she sugared by hand. The one she practiced on 4 different dummies before getting the piping just right. "I thought," she started, then stopped. "I thought they'd at least try it." I walked toward her, arms open. But she stepped back. And in that moment, watching my daughter shrink in her own kitchen, in her own dream, I felt something rise in me I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. They weren't just rejecting her food. They were rejecting her. And they weren't going to get away with it. Not again. The kitchen smelled like lemon zest, brown butter, and something floral, maybe the lavender syrup Ella had steeped overnight. It should have smelled like celebration. Instead, it felt like a memorial for something unspoken. She'd gone quiet, wiping the counter for the 3rd time, even though it was spotless. I wanted to say something comforting. I wanted to fix it, but I couldn't lean on to her, not anymore. So I just stood there and watched her fold the same dish towel over and over, her hands moving with practiced purpose, her mind clearly elsewhere. And in that stillness, I was 12 again. My sister Allison twirling in the living room in her recital dress, gold sequins and white ballet flats. My mother clapped like she was watching Swan Lake at Lincoln Center. I sat on the couch beside a disassembled transistor radio, grease on my fingers. When I tried to show my parents how I'd rebuilt it to work better than before, my dad said, "That's nice, Claire, but don't get your hands dirty before dinner." Allison got trophies. I got warnings. When she asked for dance classes, they paid in advance for the whole year. When I asked for a leatherworking course, they said, "We don't have the money." I built a business out of it years later, a modest home goods store in downtown Asheville. My husband carves wood, I do the design and finishing. It's honest work, meaningful. We make enough to live comfortably. My parents still call it, "your little craft thing." Allison, meanwhile, has 2 degrees and no job. She floats from city to city like a feather with no wind. When her apartment flooded last spring, guess who covered the repairs? Me. They never thanked me. Just said, We knew you'd come through. My family treats my stability like a communal emergency fund. They treat my daughter like a sideshow. But Ella, she's different. She's what I might have been if someone had told me my hands weren't just good for holding napkins. She reads restaurant reviews like scripture, studies plating techniques with the intensity of a surgeon. She once cried because her hollandaise sauce lacked emotional structure. I still don't know what that means, but I love her for it. She doesn't just want to cook, she needs to. It's how she breathes. Her dream is to get into the culinary program at Charleston Culinary Academy. She reads their website once a week like it's a love letter. And like me, she's surrounded by people who try to shrink that dream until it fits inside a polite conversation. She'll grow out of it. It's a cute hobby. She's too sensitive to work in kitchens. But she doesn't shrink. She learns, she adapts, she burns things and remakes them. She overwhips the cream and starts again. She makes room for improvement without surrendering her joy. So when she said, "I want to cook the whole thing this year, no help," I was nervous but proud. She knew they might not show up. She knew they could be cruel. But she tried anyway. She wanted to show them what she could do. And they didn't even look. Now she stood in a room full of empty chairs, her masterpiece untouched. A silence louder than any insult echoing between each centerpiece. They thought they could erase her. But I'd been erased once before. I wasn't about to let it happen to her. I don't know what flipped the switch inside me. Maybe it was the way Ella whispered, "Let's just throw it all out," like she was trying to erase her own memory before it solidified into pain. Or maybe it was the final blow that arrived 5 minutes later on my phone, of course, like everything cowardly does. A payment notification. 285.3. The Laurel Restaurant. 5:59 p.m. My business card. The one I used to cover emergency family costs, water heaters, plane tickets, dental copays. The card they weren't supposed to have anymore. They had used my money to pay for the dinner that replaced my daughter's. I stared at the screen, still holding the tart crust Ella had made that morning. And I laughed. Not because it was funny, because if I didn't, I would have shattered something. They hadn't just skipped her. They made me fund the rejection. And they thought we'd swallow it. Quietly. Like always. Not this time. I called my husband first. "Can you come home right now?" He didn't ask questions. "Give me 20 minutes. Then, I started calling other people. Friends we hadn't seen in months. Neighbors who still waved when walking their dogs. My old coworker Becca, who once brought her son over for a Halloween cookie night. Sam, my cousin on Dad's side, the too political one who got iced out years ago for calling my parents out at a Thanksgiving. People from our community garden group. A woman I'd only met twice at a bake sale. I didn't explain much. I just told them the truth. My daughter spent 3 days cooking for her grandmother's birthday. They ditched her. There's food for 23 people. If you can come, please do. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. And to my shock, they came. By the time Wilmie's husband pulled into the driveway, the first car was already parked. It was Nora, our next-door neighbor, with her daughter, a bottle of red wine, and homemade napkin rings, just in case we needed something pretty. Then came a family of 5 we knew from the co-op. Then Becca, with her son, and a bouquet of tulips she grabbed from a gas station. And then, the journalist. I hadn't invited her. Someone else had. Her name was Devon. She had a small camera bag slung over one shoulder and wore boots covered in clay dust. "I heard what happened," she said at the door. "Mind if I take a few photos? I write for the Asheville Chronicle's weekend food feature." I froze. But Ella peeked from the kitchen. Her eyes were wide. "Go ahead," I said. "You should taste the food." Devon didn't just taste, she took notes, asked about ingredients, photographed every plate. She leaned in and whispered to me as she sampled Ella's rosemary tart. "You know she's better than half the chefs I've reviewed this year, right?" I swallowed hard. "Tell her that." By the time the third wave of guests arrived, We had to push the coffee table into the hallway and drag in the patio furniture. Ella hovered near the kitchen doorway like a ghost, cheeks flushed. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I'm salvaging your dignity. Help me find more chairs." She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. But she didn't say no. We pushed 2 folding tables together. I unfolded her printed menus. And just before she disappeared into the kitchen to rewarm the main course, I looked her straight in the eye and said, "You cooked. They walked. But tonight we rise." She blinked. Once. Then she nodded. And the room began to fill. The dining room looked like something between a holiday dinner and a community revival. Folding chairs lined every corner. A couple sat on the piano bench. Someone offered up a plastic stool from their gardening shed. The tables didn't match, but the food Ella's food tied everything together like thread through a quilt. She was pacing in the kitchen, whispering to herself about sauce temperatures and plating sequences. "Do you think the lavender glaze will hold under the heat lamp?" she asked me, half panicked. "We don't have a heat lamp," I said gently. "Exactly," she replied, nearly breathless. Will brought her a glass of water and put a hand on her shoulder. "You've got this," he said quietly. "They're here for you." And they were. All 23 seats were full. The room buzzed with anticipation, and the air smelled like rosemary, lemon, and something caramelizing. Ella peeked from the kitchen like a cautious raccoon. Do I serve now?" I looked at her. "No, you serve your menu." She nodded, swallowed hard, and stepped out with the first course mini butternut squash tarts with a drizzle of sage cream. A hush fell. She made her way around the table, placing each plate with trembling but steady hands. When the guests finally picked up their forks, the murmurs began. "Oh wow, is that nutmeg? This crust is unreal. Wait, did a teenager make this?" Devon, the journalist, was snapping photos silently, her eyes wide. By the time the main course was served, stuffed mushroom caps with lemon couscous and herbed chicken roulade, the room was alive. People clapped between bites. One man closed his eyes after tasting the glaze. Then came the moment I wasn't ready for. A man I barely knew, someone's cousin, I think, stood up, glass raised. "I don't usually do toasts," he said, "but I need to say something." Everyone quieted. "To Ella," he said. "To the young woman who didn't just cook, she created, who made a feast not for recognition, but for love. And who, when left behind, fed a room full of strangers with more grace and heart than most people twice her age." He raised his glass. "To the chef of the night and, if we're lucky, of the future." There was a beat of silence. Then the entire room rose. Chairs scraped the floor. Napkins hit laps. Every single person stood and clapped. Ella stood frozen, her serving spoon still in her hand. She looked at me. I nodded. Tears welled up in her eyes, but this time, they didn't fall from heartbreak. They shimmered from something else. Pride. Someone brought out a store-bought cake, a last-minute backup, clearly, but the crowd insisted Ella cut her own. The cake was a masterpiece. 3 tiers, piped with white chocolate rosettes, the top layer dusted in edible lavender. She sliced it carefully, and as she handed out the pieces, people asked for seconds. A little girl from next door tugged her sleeve. "Can you cater my birthday?" Ella laughed, a real, unguarded sound. For the first time that night, she looked like herself again. Not broken. Not small. But radiant. When the last guest left, she collapsed onto the couch, apron stained, hair loose, eyes shining. She didn't say much, just leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I think I finally cooked for the right people." And I whispered back, "You always did. They just weren't ready to taste it." It was just past 2 a.m. The house had finally quieted. Half the cake was in the fridge, and the last wine glasses were soaking in the sink. I was humming some low, tuneless melody, letting myself feel a tiny sliver of peace. Ella had fallen asleep on the couch, apron still tied around her waist, hands curled like she was still holding a piping bag. Then came the knock. No, not a knock. A bang. 3 sharp, angry fists against the front door. I froze. That kind of silence, the one just before confrontation, it has a weight. Like the air pauses to brace itself. I wiped my hands on a towel and peeked through the window. There they were. My parents. Standing on the porch in matching windbreakers, stiff and fuming like background actors in a courtroom drama. And slightly behind them, arms folded in her signature practiced pose, was my sister Allison. I opened the door, but I didn't smile. And I didn't invite them in. "You need to fix this," my father barked, skipping hello altogether. My mother stepped forward. "Do you have any idea what you've done to our reputation?" Allison didn't speak yet. She was saving her voice for maximum theatrical impact. I blinked slowly. "What I've done?" They didn't wait. They shoved past me into my hallway, into my home as if they still had some authority here. "You told the media we abandoned her," my mom snapped. "How dare you let that article get published?" "I didn't tell them anything," I said, crossing my arms. "A journalist came. She tasted Ella's food. She asked what happened. And she wrote the truth." My dad jabbed a finger toward me. "You think this is funny? Everyone at church read it. Our neighbors saw it. My golf group won't even respond to my messages." I raised one eyebrow. Devastating. That's when Allison stepped forward, voice trembling with polished calm. "You need to issue a correction," she said. "Tell them it was exaggerated, that it was taken out of context." "Taken out of context?" I repeated. "Did someone hack your thumbs and send that group text from the Laurel? Did I imagine the 285 charge on my card? Did Ella hallucinate the photos of you all laughing over filet mignon while she stood here with a handmade 3-layer cake?" My mother's voice cracked. She made us look like monsters. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "No," I said quietly. "You did that yourselves. She just cooked." The shouting rose. They weren't talking to me anymore, they were talking at me, through me. "She humiliated the family. She's ungrateful. She weaponized the internet." And then, like venom, came the line that truly snapped something in me. My mother turned toward the hallway where Ella had quietly appeared, bleary-eyed and silent. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she said to my daughter. One moment, I was in the doorway. The next, I was standing between them, my shoulders squared, voice like stone. "Back, away, from my child." That's when Will walked in. He'd been out on a supply run, grabbing folding chairs we'd borrowed earlier. He didn't even ask what was going on. He just saw their faces, saw Ella's eyes. And he stepped in like a wall. "You need to leave," he said calmly. My dad scoffed. "This is a family matter." "No," Will replied. "This is our home. You came here to scream at a 17-year-old girl who made you dinner. You don't get to hurt her twice. Not today, not ever." He didn't shout. He didn't flinch. And that made it even louder. They stood for a moment fuming, unraveling. Then Allison muttered something about legal action and stormed out. My parents followed. Slam. Silence. Behind me, Ella was still standing, frozen, but I could feel her breathing. Slower now, deeper. Then she whispered, "Mom, look." I turned. Across the street, Jeff, the neighbor who ran the local Facebook group, stood on his front lawn, phone in hand, still recording. By sunrise, the video had already gone viral in the local Facebook group. Title: "The grandparents from that viral Teen Chef story just showed up at her house and screamed at her." It had over 3.0 shares in 4 hours. The comments came faster than I could read them. "Who yells at a teenager over a cake? That poor girl deserved better. This is why people go no contact with family. I'd be proud if my daughter could cook like that." I scrolled through them with one hand while stirring Ella's cocoa with the other. She was still curled up on the couch, half asleep, emotionally worn raw. Her apron was gone, but her hair still smelled faintly like vanilla and thyme. Before I blocked them, I saw the last few texts from my parents. "You've ruined us. We'll take legal action if you don't correct this. This is elder abuse. Elder abuse." Because I let the world see the truth? I didn't reply. I blocked all three: Mom, Dad, and Allison, along with the group chat they used to control. Then I did one more thing. I deleted the credit card they'd used from my business account. That particular betrayal would never happen again. Instead of ranting online, I posted a single line: "We stand by every word, and we're done protecting people who hurt our daughter." I expected backlash. What I got was support. Friends from college I hadn't heard from in years sent messages of encouragement. A chef from a small bistro in town emailed Ella and invited her to do a stage in their kitchen over the summer. A representative from Charleston Culinary Academy, very program Ella used to whisper about, left a comment under the article: "We've heard of Ella. We'll be watching her journey." Ella didn't say much at first. She just blinked at the screen, rereading the comment over and over like it might vanish if she stopped. Then she whispered, "They saw me." And that broke me. Not in the way I'd broken before: quiet, polite, invisible, but in the way you break when something too good to be real actually is. When all the pain, the rejection, the buried hurt, it suddenly becomes the soil for something better. We didn't celebrate. Not yet. But we finally exhaled. Fast forward 1 year. Ella got in. Not just to any program, but to the one she thought was impossible. Charleston Culinary Academy, full ride. First-year student, but already taking private orders, dinners, wedding tastings, seasonal boxes. Her food blog is thriving. Recipes, photos, videos. She has real followers now, people who see her. People who taste what she feels. She never reached out to my parents again. Neither did I. Word spread that they moved 2 towns over for a quieter life, they told someone. Truth was, too many people had stopped inviting them to things. Too many sudden schedule changes from old friends. Too many new people who'd already read the article. They thought silence was power. They thought guilt was currency. But Ella took the quiet they gave her and filled it with flavor, with motion, with vision, with self-worth. They never said sorry. I never got that 285 back. But we got something else. Clarity. And peace. We didn't throw a birthday party the next year. There were no invitations, no RSVP lists, no 3-tier cake piped with candied violets. Ella didn't ask if anyone would show up. She didn't plan the seating chart or print menus in cream cardstock. Instead, we spent the evening in our backyard, just the 3 of us, around a small fire pit. She grilled lamb skewers with rosemary and garlic, roasted lemon potatoes, and made a tart with figs she'd picked that morning from a neighbor's tree. There was no spotlight, no applause, just quiet chewing, soft laughter, and a kind of ease I hadn't felt in years. At one point, she looked up from her plate, smirked, and said, "No guest count to worry about." I laughed. "No linen napkins either." Will raised his glass. "No drama." We clinked our cups of sparkling cider, and Ella said it softly, almost to herself. "This might be the best birthday dinner I've ever cooked." And she meant it. It wasn't grand, but it was hers, undistorted, unfiltered, unclaimed by anyone who hadn't earned a seat at her table. I didn't need to ask if she thought about them parents, my sister. I knew she did. I did too. But there was no grief left. No bitterness. Just the hollow space where obligation used to be. They had taken their silence and filled it with judgment. She had taken their rejection and built a future out of it. Sometimes, I still get messages from people who read the article or saw the video. Some say, "You were so brave to stand up for her." Others say, "I wish someone had done that for me." But here's the truth. I don't always write back. I wasn't brave. I was done. Done funding people who thought love meant leverage. Done shrinking myself to make them more comfortable. Done teaching my daughter that silence is the price of peace. Because it's not. Peace doesn't come from swallowing pain. It comes from choosing who sits at your table. And I chose her. Ella, my daughter, my second chance, my karmic echo, my joy. She didn't just survive the moment they erased her. She rewrote herself in frosting, fire, and flour. And I got to watch her do it. 1 year later, she still hasn't unblocked them. Neither have I. They never called again, never asked for reconciliation. They wanted to move on, but not to make amends, just to rewrite their part of the story. But it's not their story anymore. It's hers. And now, every time she stands behind a counter or sends out a dish with her name printed on the card, she claims it again. Quietly, completely. So, no, we didn't celebrate a birthday that year. But we did mark something far more sacred. The moment my daughter cooked for people who saw her. The day she stopped asking to be included and built her own table instead. And if you're wondering, would I do it all again? Yes. Every dish, every chair, every single scar. Because I didn't just stand up for her. I stood beside her. And I'll keep doing it. As long as I live.